Okay, wait. No. Okay. Hi. It's April 3rd when I'm recording this, so this is going to be my TBR for this month, as well as what I read last month in March. So, let's go through it. It's a honker of a list.
I wake up in the morning, open the shades.
Hello, and welcome back to my channel. First, I'm going to go through what I read in March, and then I'm going to go through the TBR. So, I didn't read too much in March. It was kind of a busy month, and also I just wasn't in the right mindset, headspace for it. So, didn't read as much as I was hoping to, but I still read a good amount. And I got to give myself grace for that and remind myself that got to be realistic, and with a job, full-time job, and a life, I need to remember that I can't read as much as some of the full-time booktubers and people that are doing this for a living, and this is their job. So gotta be a little easier on myself than that. But for the month of March, I started out with reading Icebreaker, and I'll put that right here. I read Icebreaker on my Kindle, and it was so good. I gave that one, I believe, a 5 out of 5 stars. I'll put the final rating right here, but I read that first and loved it so much. It was so good, and I loved all the characters. I loved the character development and the found family trope in it, as well as, of course, the romance. What Icebreaker is about, it's about a girl who is a figure skater and a guy who's a hockey player. At some point, they, like, their ice rinks, one of their ice rinks gets vandalized, and the machine is broken that helps keep it cool and keeps the rink open for them. And so the hockey players and the figure skaters have to share a rink and work around each other's schedules and figure all that out, and it causes a lot of clashing and arguments and stuff like that. But once they start working together and everything, they get closer together, and one of the main girls, the main character, figure skater, I can't remember her name right now, she has this thing with the head captain hockey player of the team, and they go head to head with each other, are always arguing and everything, but they have this like sexual tension with each other. So it's all about the figure skater and one of her best friends and all the hockey players. I hope that made sense, but it's a really good book. I really like it, but it is a romance book mixed with hockey. So if you like reading romance books mixed with sports, highly recommend it. So many people have raved about it in the past, and so I wanted to give it a try, and I ended up loving it. So 10 out of 10 recommend. And then I went into reading The Love Hypothesis and Love in Other Words, and you'll see in the next video me reading these and giving my ratings and all of that. But The Love Hypothesis was so good. It's about Olive and Adam, and Olive is in school. She's a third-year PhD candidate, and Olive is trying to prove to them that she is trying to find a cure for pancreatic cancer. And so but the lab that she's using at her current school doesn't have the amount of equipment and nice enough equipment that she needs to be able to continue her study, and so she's trying to get scholarships to go to Harvard and use their labs and their equipment. And so it's all about that, and also her relationship with Adam, this professor. One night she's working in the lab, and she sees her roommate, who is a big advocate for romance, and Olive is trying to prove to her best friend that she doesn't need romance to Olive is trying to prove to her best friend that she doesn't need romance in her life right now. She's trying to focus on her school and all of that, her schoolwork, and her roommate isn't backing down. So they're both scientists, so obviously she's like, oh, well, she needs cold hard facts, so I'm just going to act like I have a boyfriend, but she's gonna need proof. Then comes in Adam Carlson, her professor, or a professor, not her professor, and she sees him. It's the first guy she sees when she sees her roommate coming, and so she just kisses him. And then she convinces him, or he agrees to fake date her just so that her best friend can go ahead and move on from focusing on her Olive's love life and focus on her own love life and be with this other guy that she wants to be with. So it's all about that. That was a really good book. And then the other book I read is Love in Other Words, and the other book is Love in Other Words, and this one is about Macy and Elliot, and this one starts out as like best friends, lovers trope. So they're best friends when, like, growing up. They meet each other when they're younger, and then it has dual timelines. So every other chapter is going to be flashing back and then to the present, and it goes through how they met each other and how they became best friends and their life up until present day, and them running back into each other. They hadn't seen each other in like 10 years. They were like best friends, and then something happens and then they drift apart and they don't see each other for like 10 years, and then they run into each other. I really loved this book, and you'll see my ratings on these two in my other video that's coming out soon. And then the last book that I read, and I'm actually still currently reading, is this honker. It's called A Court of Wings and Ruin. It's the third book in the ACOTAR series, if you have ever heard of that series. And if you haven't, ACOTAR is short for A Court of Thorns and Roses. So the A Court of Thorns and Roses series is a 5-book series, and it's by the author Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book, like I said, and I am almost done with it. That's how much I have left. And it's so good. I am loving it so far. It was a slow start because this one is more about politics and war, as compared to the second book, which was very heavily on romance, and I am a sucker for romance books, so especially when they're fantasy romance. Love those. So anyway, the second book was just as thick and took me a little bit to get through, but not as long as this one has. This one is about Feyre and some other characters that I won't really go into depth and detail about because I don't want to ruin anything for the first and second book if you do want to give this series a try. But the main character is Feyre and then all of her close friends, and like I said, it revolves around war and a little bit of romance and a lot of politics. So I highly recommend the series. The first book is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So if you like Beauty and the Beast, then you would definitely like this series, well, at least that first book. And then from that first book, it takes a big turn, a big twist, and the rest of the series is following more in depth into that world and the romance and all of the characters and everything. So like I said, highly recommend the series. If you want more information on it, you can always ask me about it in the comments below. Otherwise, you can read the description on the back of the A Court of Thorns and Roses book or look it up online. But I don't recommend looking up the rest of the synopses of the rest of the books because it'll ruin it for you. So just read the first book, the information on the back of the first book, or look it up online, like I said, and then go into it blind for the rest of the series because it'll ruin it for you. Highly recommend this series if you are a big fan of fantasy or fantasy romance, or if you're trying to get into fantasy books. This is a great introduction into that, in my opinion. The first book, like I said, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so it's easy to get, like, to read the book and understand everything, and by the end of the book, you're already so involved in their world and understand a lot of the terms that are used in the book, or in the series. So give it a try, and if you do, let me know what you think. For any of those who have read this series before, please don't put any spoilers in the comments below. We don't want to ruin it for anyone else that has not read the books yet. So that was all the books that I read in March/am reading. And now we're going into TBR for April. And if you don't know what TBR stands for, it is to be read. So these are all the books that I have on my list to be read in April, or at least hope to read in April. So I have like a few books that are on my realistic list of to be read, and that is going to start with the last 2 books in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. So, oh my god, there's so many. The 4th book is a really tiny one. It's what people call a novella, so it's kind of one of those in-between books that just kind of is like a filler throughout the series. People call it the Christmas special, I've heard. I don't know. I think it's set around Christmas time, but yeah, so that book, the 4th book, A Court of Frost and Starlight, and then the 5th book, A Court of Silver Flames. This one's huge. So if I could just get through these 2 books, or at least this book, this month, I'll be proud of myself because it's huge. But I love this series, and so I think that I'll read it pretty quickly, especially if I go straight from A Court of Wings and Ruin, the 3rd book that I'm currently reading. If I go from that book right into the 4th and 5th book of the series, I think I'll read it much faster than if I read a few books in between these. Like I call them palate cleansers. Sometimes with a heavy fantasy book that's so in depth, I need a break and I need what I call palate cleanser, and I'll read like a quick cheesy romance or anything like that in between. But then, and like sometimes that's really great and I recommend it if you just read like a really intense heavy book. Then do something lighthearted and easy and quick to read. But sometimes that also gets you out of like the zone. You have to kind of like, it takes a while to get back into that world, those characters and those terms that they use and all of that. So it can take a little bit longer to get back into the book. And that kind of is what happened to me with the book I'm reading right now, A Court of Wings and Ruin. It took a while for me to get back into the world and those characters, and especially with it already being such an intense book with war and politics in it. It just took a lot to get into. So I'll probably read those right after I finish the 3rd book. And then I'll either read 2 romance books or 3 murder mystery books. And this is where I'm not sure. So those are my for sure books that I'm gonna read. And then these are the other books that I'd like to get to if I can. So the 2 romance books are The Do-Over by Lynn Painter and By a Thread by Lucy Score. These 2 books I will mention a couple times in my next video coming out, but these are 2 that I want to get to really popular romance books that a lot of people read. This one just came out, and so a lot of people read it in February because it does revolve around Valentine's Day, and it's kind of one of those Groundhog's Day books where it just repeats the same day over and over. So this one I really wanted to read in February, but I didn't get to it, and so I still really want to read it. And then this is By a Thread by Lucy Score. This is also a big book. Like, this is like 500 or maybe close to 600 pages. Yeah, it's almost 600 pages. So this is a really big book, and if I'm reading that huge book from the ACOTAR series, A Court of Silver Flames, I don't know if I'm gonna get to this book, and I want to read these 2 together and do a reading vlog with these 2 books, so I might save these for May. But if I don't read those, then it doesn't make any sense why I would go to a 3-book series instead of just 2 books. But like I said, By a Thread is huge, so I don't know. We're gonna figure it out. But otherwise, I would like to read these because I've heard sometimes it's difficult sitting outside. Okay, these books are a 3-part series, like I said, and the first book is called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, if you've heard of this series. So it's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Good Girl, Bad Blood, and then the final book, As Good as Dead. And I think that there is a prequel to these, this series as well. But either way, these 3 books I've heard a lot of people talk about and so many good things about it, but it is a YA series, so a young adult series. I really like young adult series. It's no shame to that genre of books. They can be just as good as adult fiction. So like I said, I've heard a lot of really good things about it, so if I'm not feeling romance books, and if I want to read these, which are murder mystery books, then I'll probably do that instead. But yeah, so this basically very brief description of what this series is about is it's set in high school, and it revolves around this girl who there's like a murder that happens in with like one of the students in their high school, and she is really like interested and into murder mysteries and crime investigation and all of that, and so she goes ahead and tries to solve the murder. And so the first book I think is just mainly about that, and then the rest of the books that follow are just going more in depth. Maybe there's more deaths, I don't know, but that's all I know really about it. But I've just heard really good things about the series, so we'll see which route I go. But that is all of my TBR for April / hopefuls for April to read. If you have read any of these books and loved them or hated them, leave a comment below what you thought of it, or if you're thinking about giving any of these books a try, let me know as well, and we can always like message each other and give our thoughts and takeaways on it, because I love talking about books, obviously. And yeah, I'm so excited for this month, and I'm hoping to read a lot more books this month than I did last month. That's just a personal goal of mine. Don't judge yourself if you read one book or half of a book, or you read a bunch of books and you still think that it's not enough. We're our own worst critic, and we're always going to be, you know, trying to do more than what we did, and try to remind yourself to look back and think, wow, I read 3.5 books. That's amazing. Some people, it takes them a whole year to read 3 books, and it's difficult for them. And for some people, they hate books, and so they don't read any. The number that you read there's no good versus bad or anything like that, or any in between. Be proud of yourself no matter how much or how little you read. Reading is just exciting, and so I always encourage people to read no matter how many books they read or how little they read. It's always good to, you know, step out of our world and into someone else's world, or whether that be fiction or nonfiction. Definitely keep reading if you are reading, or if you are nervous to start reading but want to give it a shot. I cannot recommend it enough. I love reading so much, I always have. And yeah, that's just my little spiel for the day, my little encouraging moment for you, my TED Talk. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps get my videos noticed and get them to other people around the world that are wanting to learn more about books or wanting different recommendations and everything. So make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment below if you have any thoughts or any recommendations for future videos, and otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
I'm falling to pieces in my room.